In my previous life, my girlfriend had a white moonlight named Sean who had liver cancer. After Belle successfully matched for a transplant, she insisted on donating her liver to Sean regardless of the consequences. At the last moment, I stopped her, but Sean still passed away. 10 years later, that malicious woman Belle first strangled our child, then pushed my parents off a high-rise building, and finally stabbed my liver with a knife. Covered in blood, she laughed maniacally, demanding that I pay with my life for her white moonlight. Upon waking up from Rebirth, the first thing I did was take Belle to get a compatibility test. Chapter 1. During dinner that day, Belle idly picked at the food in her bowl and casually mentioned to me, "I heard Sean has liver cancer and needs a liver transplant to survive." I blinked hard, confirming that I had truly been reborn. In my previous life, Belle had sat across from me just like this, pretending to unintentionally bring up Sean's plight, saying that classmates at school had voluntarily gone for matching tests to save him, since Sean was an orphan and could only rely on his classmates. At that time, I had no idea that Sean was her lifelong crush, and my heart was filled with love for her. I frowned, worried about her health, and tried to stop her from getting tested for compatibility. She was unhappy, saying it wasn't certain to succeed, and we almost got into an argument. Back then, I didn't even notice the dissatisfaction in her eyes. It wasn't until she secretly went for the compatibility test behind my back and succeeded that I realized what was happening. I brought her parents to stop her at the door of the operating room. As a result, Sean died, and Belle has hated me ever since. She pretended to be grateful that I stopped her and even said she would marry no one but me. But in the 10th year of our marriage, she colluded with outsiders, framed my company, and drove me to bankruptcy. At my lowest point, she killed our son, pushed my parents off the building right in front of me, and finally stabbed me. She accused me, saying that if I hadn't stopped her, she could have saved Sean, and that every day with me was disgusting. She called me a cold-blooded monster. Thinking of my parents and my son, I grit my teeth in hatred, wishing I could tear Belle into pieces. "What's wrong, Sawyer? I'm talking to you." Belle pretended to be angry and glared at me. I used to find her cute when she acted like this, but now it just makes me sick. Having just been reborn, I couldn't risk alerting her. I said, "It's nothing. I was just thinking that Sean doesn't have any family, so he'll have to rely on us classmates. Let's go to the hospital later to get tested for a match." As soon as I finished speaking, I saw Belle's smug expression. She smiled and gave me a heart sign with her hands. I sneered inwardly. Since she resented me for stopping her, I'd do exactly as she wished, personally send her down the path to her own demise. When Belle and I arrived at the hospital, there weren't many people in Sean's room. In my previous life, Belle had claimed that all the students from school had come to get tested, and she was the only one who matched. I never believed it. Sean wasn't particularly popular at school, so why would so many people show up? Seeing it with my own eyes only confirmed my suspicions. Sean on the hospital bed truly looked like a sickly, handsome man who could easily stir a woman's maternal instincts. But I believe those who seem pitiable often have their own despicable traits. Belle spoke to Sean with tear-filled eyes for quite a while, completely ignoring me, her actual boyfriend. Worried she might miss the matching test time, I quickly reminded her, "Belle, let Sean rest. We should hurry to get the matching test done." Belle reluctantly bid Sean farewell and deliberately kept her distance from me as we left the ward. I watched her behavior coldly, then glanced back at Sean. His eyes showed no emotion, as if he had expected Belle to come all along. This only deepened my disdain for Belle. When we reached the door of the examination room, Belle tightly held onto my sleeve, afraid I might back out. And rightfully so, Sean and I share the same blood type, so theoretically, I have a higher chance of a successful match. I said, "We can't be examined at the same time. I'll go to the other side." Holding back my disgust, I patted Belle's hair and walked into the adjacent examination room right in front of her. I left the door slightly ajar. Once I heard her enter the next room and close the door, I apologized to the doctor, said I needed to use the restroom, and quickly slipped out of the examination room. I had no intention of getting tested for a match for Sean. After all, Belle was sure to succeed. When Belle came out, I pretended I had just finished as well, and she didn't notice anything amiss. A week later, Belle received a text message confirming she was a match. She excitedly grabbed my arm and said, "I'm a match, Sawyer. That's wonderful. I can save Sean." Probably because I didn't stop her, she let her guard down with me and shared the text message with me as soon as she received it. Watching her happy expression, I thought she was utterly foolish. I forged a text message about a failed match and showed it to her. A flicker of regret passed through her eyes. In her heart, she must have hoped that more people would match successfully. Unfortunately, only she could succeed. I asked her, "Belle, are you really planning to donate your liver?" She looked at me with a guarded expression. "Didn't we agree on this? Are you going to stop me?" I said, "No, I'm just asking." "Such a big thing, shouldn't you tell your parents?" She immediately got anxious. "No. If you dare tell them, I'll never speak to you again." I quickly raised my hand. "Don't worry, I absolutely won't tell them." I thought to myself, it's you who told me not to tell, so don't blame me later. In my previous life, I ignored her threat, notified her parents, and even brought them to stop her. But this time, since she specifically warned me, I certainly won't interfere. I'm going to personally escort her into the operating room. Belle couldn't wait to confirm the surgery time with the doctor and then rushed to Sean's hospital room. There, she saw a girl sobbing pitifully in Sean's arms. Sean gently comforted the girl. "It's okay. I heard the match was successful, so I won't die." Belle's face instantly turned pale, while I watched the drama unfold from behind. In my past life, I already knew Sean had a girlfriend named Lila. When Sean died, Lila had even cursed at me. Belle questioned him like a proper wife. "Sean. Who is she?" Lila stepped back from Sean's embrace and said to Belle with a smile, "Are you the one who's going to donate a liver to Sean?" Belle lifted her head with an air of superiority, completely oblivious to the flicker of disgust in Sean's eyes. She really is an idiot. I rolled my eyes, not wanting to watch their little act any longer, and headed to the doctor's office. There was something I needed to confirm. Stepping out of the doctor's office, Belle stormed toward me, fuming. "Where have you been? I've been looking for you forever." She shouted at me, not caring about the people around us watching. I looked at her coldly. In my past life, she was just like this, disregarding my dignity, often belittling and humiliating me in public. It was only later that I realized she saw me as her emotional punching bag in ATM. I said, "I'll go check with the doctor about the surgery precautions and prepare some nutritional supplements for you." Sure enough, her attitude softened. "Then remember to prepare some for Sean too, he's so pitiful." She winked at me, thinking I would still obey her every word as I used to. I smiled and nodded, but inside, I felt sick to my stomach. In my past life, I paid for all of Sean's medical expenses and even arranged his funeral, yet she still resented me. Since that's the case, I'm not going to be the fool anymore. The surgery was scheduled for 1 month later. I told Belle that the doctor advised her to get more nutrition, so I ordered greasy soup from a restaurant for her every day. Whenever she didn't want to drink it, I'd say it was the doctor's requirement to improve her liver condition. Each time, she'd hold her nose and drink it down. I have to admit, her love for Sean is genuine. Over the course of the month, Belle's weight noticeably increased. Sean couldn't hide his disgust every time he saw her, but Belle was still lost in her romantic fantasy. I almost couldn't bear to shatter her illusion. During this month, I took the time to contact my parents and ask them not to visit me recently. In this lifetime, I wanted to keep my parents away from that bitch Belle and deal with her myself. The day before the surgery, while feeding Belle the soup, I casually asked, "Belle, if you don't tell your parents, who will sign the surgery consent form for you?" Belle frowned. "You sign it. No matter what happens, just make sure the surgery continues." This foolish woman, I've been waiting for her to say exactly that. I said, "I've asked the hospital. Since we're just boyfriend and girlfriend, you might need to write an authorization letter for me so I can make decisions on your behalf." Belle said readily, "That's simple enough. I'll sign one." Perhaps it was because I had been so accommodating about her donating her liver recently that she let her guard down and easily handed over the power of life and death to me. As I looked at the handwritten authorization letter, my eyes were filled with coldness. Belle, you brought this upon yourself. Don't blame me. On the day of the surgery, the doctor looked at Belle's test results and frowned. These numbers don't seem right. The doctor hesitated, unable to understand why the matching indicators had changed so drastically in just 1 month. I had coaxed Belle into staying in the hospital room, unaware of the situation here. I said, "Doctor, my girlfriend is determined to donate her liver." The doctor replied, "But her condition and the test results indicate there are risks." The numbers were all at critical levels, and the risks were high. Yet, the doctor couldn't outright refuse the donation, especially since Sean's days were numbered. At that moment, Belle rushed in anxiously, saying, "Doctor, it's not good. Sean has fainted." Just as I had calculated, in my past life, Sean fell seriously ill on this very day and was admitted to the intensive care unit. Without a liver donor, he didn't survive more than 2 days before passing away. The doctor hurried to Sean's room, and after a flurry of activity, Sean was wheeled into the operating room. Lila pleaded with Belle at the door, "Belle, didn't you promise to donate your liver to Sean? Why aren't you going? Have you changed your mind?" People around them pointed at Belle and whispered, "She promised to donate her liver, and now she's backing out. Is she scared? That's a human life at stake." The rumors left Belle with no way to back down. She rushed to the door and banged on it, shouting, "I want to donate my liver. Open the door quickly. I want to donate my liver." A nurse pulled her away. No noise in front of the operating room. I looked at the frenzied Belle, a coldness spreading in my eyes. The operating room door opened again, and the doctor said, "The patient's condition is critical. Surgery must be performed immediately. The liver source must be prepared right away." After saying this, he glanced at Belle and sighed helplessly, "Are you sure you want to donate?" Belle shouted, "Donate. Doctor, I can have the surgery right away. I can do it." The doctor shook his head helplessly, "Since that's the case, the family members, come with me to sign the forms. Nurse, prepare the liver source for surgery." After saying this, he took me aside. "I've already explained her situation. If she insists on donating, sign all these consent forms." The doctor handed me a stack of papers. It seemed Sean's condition was critical, so I signed them without hesitation. Belle was quickly wheeled into the operating room. I leaned against the wall, staring at the surgical lights, thinking, "Belle, your retribution has come." About half an hour later, a nurse came out and called, "Who is Belle's family member?" I stepped forward and asked, "I am." "What's wrong, nurse?" The nurse said, "Belle experienced massive bleeding in her liver and spleen during the surgery. If we continue with the donation, we may not be able to save her spleen. Should the family terminate the procedure?" Lila rushed over anxiously, afraid I would stop the surgery. I forced a slight smile. "My girlfriend has put in a lot of effort for this donation, and she's determined. I believe she wouldn't want me to stop the surgery." Lila breathed a sigh of relief. The nurse said, "Then hurry up and sign." She handed me another form, and I signed it without even looking. Another half hour passed, and the nurse came out again. "Belle needs her spleen removed. Family, come sign quickly." Again, I signed without hesitation. After that, the nurse came out time and again. "Belle is bleeding uncontrollably. Family, come sign quickly. Belle has lost heart and lung function and needs to be put on machines. Family." After several hours of surgery, the nurse came out countless times. Belle went through massive bleeding, spleen removal, being put on a ventilator, and receiving strong hormone injections, suffering a great deal, all of which she brought upon herself. 5 hours later, the doctor came out to announce that the surgery was successful, but he used the word temporarily. No one else noticed except me. Belle and Sean were wheeled into the ICU. Looking at the unconscious Belle, I took out my phone and called her parents. I had no intention of paying the medical bills that would follow. Upon hearing that their daughter was in the ICU, Belle's parents quickly rushed over from the neighboring city. Her mother grabbed my clothes as if she wanted to tear me apart, and her father glared at me with fury in his eyes. I looked at them, just like in my past life. In my past life, when I told them Belle was going to donate her liver, they blamed me, saying I didn't care about Belle's safety and that I wasn't man enough. Later, when Belle and I got married, they spent my money and still slandered me in front of Belle. They even looked down on our children. I took out the photos of the authorization letter and surgical consent form written by Belle and said, "Uncle, Aunt, this is the authorization letter Belle wrote for me." She insisted on donating her liver to Sean, and I couldn't stop her. You know how she is, she didn't want me to tell you. They stomped their feet in frustration, saying, "What are we going to do now? Her spleen has been removed, how will she manage in the future?" Belle's mother shouted, "Who did Belle donate her liver to? He took my daughter's liver and now he's not saying a word." Coincidentally, Lila came to visit Sean and was grabbed by Belle's parents. "So you're the one who took my daughter's liver? Because of you, my daughter lost her spleen. You have to pay." Lila trembled in fear, while I watched the drama unfold. The real spectacle was yet to come. I said, "Uncle, Aunt, this is Sean's friend. Sean is also in the ICU and hasn't woken up yet." As soon as the words were spoken, the nurse informed us that Sean had woken up and could return to the ward for observation. Belle's parents followed Lila to Sean's ward with resentment. Sean, who had just undergone surgery, looked pale, with tubes wrapped around him and a dazed expression in his eyes. He asked me, "Sawyer, what is this?" I shrugged. "These are Belle's parents. Belle suffered a massive hemorrhage during the surgery, and her spleen had to be removed. She's still in the ICU." I spoke calmly, feeling increasingly satisfied inside. Sean widened his eyes, remembering, and I saw through the impatience in his gaze. Belle's mother spoke first. "Go ahead, tell us. My daughter has lost her spleen, how are you going to compensate for that?" Sean hadn't expected Belle's parents to demand money. He opened his mouth, then gasped and lay back down on the bed. Lila looked at Sean with heartache, tears welling up in her eyes. "Uncle, Auntie. We know Belle has sacrificed a lot for Sean, but she did it willingly." Belle's mother cursed, "Bullshit. Even if Belle were to donate a liver, it should be to one of our own. How could she just save some man for free, letting a little vixen like you take advantage?" Lila's face flushed red and then turned pale from the scolding. I watched coldly, knowing Belle's parents had long been aware of her feelings for Sean. In my past life, I had suspected something was off about the things they said when they tried to stop Belle. "Belle, you're being foolish. Even if you donate your liver, how will the two of you, both disabled, survive? How could I have given birth to such a clueless daughter? All for a man. What can he possibly give you? He's an orphan himself. Sawyer's family is so well off, and he's completely devoted to you. Are you out of your mind? It's hateful that in my previous life, I only worried about Belle donating her liver and didn't think much about the meaning behind their words. Now it seems they look down on me, yet still let Belle marry me, all because they valued my circumstances. In this life, I won't spend a single penny on them." Sean said, "Uncle, Aunt, it's me, I'm the one who let Belle down. After I'm discharged from the hospital, I'll take care of her for a lifetime." Lila burst into tears, and Belle's parents sneered disdainfully, "Do you think everyone is as easily fooled as my daughter? With your weak and fragile body, you expect to take care of my daughter?" "Exactly. Do you think we're stupid?" Sean was so angry he almost ended up back in the operating room. Just then, a nurse called out, "Belle's family. Belle has a postoperative infection and needs another surgery." Belle's parents rushed out, and Sean breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at him, I cursed Belle for being a fool. Belle was taken back into the operating room. Belle's father pointed at my nose and yelled, "I told you long ago that Belle has a blood disorder. She needs careful care. How could you let her donate her liver?" I lowered my head, pretending to feel guilty. The surgical consent form was signed by Belle herself, and everyone in the hospital could testify that she wanted to donate her liver. It was her own choice, so it's not my fault. This surgery took over 2 hours again, and another third of her remaining half-liver was removed. Belle's mother sat on the floor, wailing, "This murderous hospital. How could you let her donate her liver?" She threw a tantrum with practiced ease, leaving me utterly stunned. Hospital security managed to control the situation and escorted them into the mediation room, and I followed along. The lead surgeon tossed a stack of documents onto the table. Based on the examination results, we determined that Belle is eligible to donate, though there are risks involved during the surgery. These are the liability waiver, commitment letter, and surgical consent form, all signed by Belle herself. After speaking, he played a video. This footage shows Belle frantically demanding to donate her liver outside the operating room when Sean's condition became critical. In the video, Belle hysterically pounded on the door, tugged at the doctor's clothes, and insisted on donating her liver like a madwoman, even accusing me of not contacting the doctor quickly enough to let her undergo the surgery. Belle's parents wore complicated expressions, holding back their curses. The doctor said coldly, based on the evidence above, Belle was in a clear state of mind and strongly insisted on donating her liver. As for Belle's current condition, it falls under one of the postoperative risks, which was also clearly stated in the preoperative consent form. Belle's parents looked at the documents and the video, falling silent. The doctor said, "Of course, we will do our best to save Belle. At present, her condition has basically stabilized." I felt a bit regretful that Belle's condition had stabilized so quickly. However, the real show is yet to come. Belle's parents couldn't blame the hospital, so they turned their anger toward me. But the authorization was written by Belle, and the consent form was signed by her. They had no grounds to blame me. A day later, Belle woke up, and her first words to me were, "How is Sean? Is he okay?" I looked at this lovesick fool and couldn't help but find it ridiculous. I replied, "Sean is fine." As soon as I finished speaking, Belle's father pushed me aside, exclaiming, "You fool! How could you agree to donate your liver? Don't you know your spleen has already been removed?" Belle looked at me with confusion, and I explained, "You had massive bleeding during the surgery, and the doctor said the spleen had to be removed. If we had stopped at that moment, both Sean and you would have been in danger." As soon as Belle heard that Sean was in danger, she immediately became agitated. "Right. We can't stop. Sean must not be harmed." I watched her coldly. Whether Sean was actually in danger or not was hard to say. Belle's parents were furious at her reaction, as no one had expected her to be so indifferent to having her spleen removed. Because she had lost more than half of her liver and her spleen had been removed, Belle was bedridden for even longer than Sean. Yet, during this entire period, Sean never once came to see her. First came the hospital bill. The nurse threw the sheet onto the bed, and when Belle's parents saw it, their expressions turned even uglier. Belle had used a lot of equipment in the operating room and spent several days in the ICU, so the hospitalization fees were quite high. Belle's mother said, "Sawyer, why don't you hurry up and pay Belle's hospital bill? This family really has no shame, still trying to make me pay." I said, "Uncle, Auntie, Belle, I gave all my money to the hospital a few days ago, and my card is empty now. My parents are on a plane and can't be reached. How about you pay for it first?" I lowered my head, pretending to be helpless. Belle frowned but said nothing, while her parents immediately started shouting, "Where would we get the money? If you can't pay, then let Sean do it. You're useless too, can't even cover a little hospital bill." When Belle heard her parents wanted to ask Sean for money, she quickly stopped them. "No way. Sean is already struggling enough. This love-struck fool is beyond saving." Belle's mother said angrily, "Then what do you suggest we do? We don't have that much money." I lowered my head and raised an eyebrow, wondering how Belle could be so carefree, with such parents and still being so love-struck. Belle said, "Let's use my credit card first. Sawyer, hurry up and ask your parents for money to pay me back." She gave me orders, and I nodded silently. "Humph, just wait until I pay back your credit card for you." When the 100,000 in fees was swiped, Belle's hands were trembling. "Tremble away, your good days are yet to come." As soon as Belle could walk, she rushed to Sean's hospital room. When she arrived, Lila and Sean were being sweet and affectionate. Belle's face instantly changed. Does this woman really think she can win a man over with just a liver? When Sean saw Belle, he hid his impatience. Well, Belle. You're recovered. He has good acting skills, and his tone is full of surprise, but he can only fool Belle. Belle leaned over Sean's bed and asked, Sean, how are you? Are you still feeling unwell? She doesn't care about my reaction at all, but I'm used to it. I'm just here to watch the show. Sean said, the doctor said I still need some time to adjust to this new liver. But Belle, it's all thanks to you. You gave me a second chance at life. I will repay you well. Sean's words made Belle lose all sense of reason, while Lila's expression turned grim. However, it seemed she and Sean had reached a consensus. Once Belle was dealt with, her parents would no longer pester Sean. Belle's parents also arrived. Belle's father said, you good for nothing. Why are you back here again? Since we're all here, let's talk about the cost of Belle's liver transplant. Belle's mother pulled Belle away from the bedside. The weak Belle nearly stumbled, but no one showed any concern. Belle shouted, I don't need Sean to pay for it. Belle's dad said, shut up. With all your hospital bills and nutrition costs, who else is going to pay if he doesn't? Belle said, Sawyer will give it to me. I was shocked. How could someone be so shameless? Belle's dad stared at Sean, what he gives you is his business. But this kid's money, not a single cent can be missing. Lila had seen how unreasonable Belle's parents could be, so she fearfully stayed close to Sean's hospital bed, their hands still clasped together as if to encourage each other. Unfortunately, Belle didn't notice. Lila retorted, you're being completely unreasonable. Belle wanted to donate her liver herself. Belle even said she didn't need any money. Belle's father snarled, what she says doesn't count. I'm telling you, kid, if you don't pay up, I won't let you off easy. Belle struggled to protest, Dad. I don't want Sean's money. Her mother slapped her, Belle's eyes welled up with tears, but Sean didn't even glance at her. Sean said breathlessly, fine, once I'm discharged, I'll pay you back slowly. Belle's father pulled out an IOU note, this is a debt of $300,000. Sign it, and we'll call it even. Belle cried out, $300,000. Dad, are you crazy? Sean snatched the IOU and signed it without hesitation. I raised an eyebrow, this Sean was quite something. But before I could enjoy the show, Sean clutched his chest and collapsed onto the bed. Lila and Belle screamed, and I kindly pressed the call button. Doctors and nurses rushed into the ward. Belle's parents were terrified, muttering, but he's weak himself, it has nothing to do with us, and tried to pull Belle away. When she refused, they slipped away first, afraid they'd be blamed. Sean was wheeled back into the ICU, and the doctor said, it's a postoperative complication, before rushing in to perform emergency treatment. Belle's face was pale as she crouched outside the emergency room door. Lila stood before her, seething with anger, and said, it's all your fault. Sean was harmed by your parents. If anything happens to him, you won't get a single penny. Belle was provoked and stood up, shoving Lila. Who do you think you are? I saved Sean's life. What right do you have to yell at me here? Lila shouted, who do you think you are? If it weren't for your liver, Sean wouldn't have bothered with you. We're the ones who belong together. Belle's worldview shattered. She stared blankly at Lila, muttering under her breath, impossible, impossible. Lila said, how is that impossible? Sean hates you the most. I'm telling you, if anything happens to Sean, I won't let you off the hook. Donating the liver was your own choice. This is extortion. After saying that, Lila stepped aside, anxiously watching the emergency room. I looked at Belle slumped on the ground, feeling a bit of satisfaction in my heart. After a long time, the doctor came out and said, the liver source itself isn't very healthy, so the patient is now experiencing severe postoperative reactions, with all indicators declining. The family should prepare themselves mentally. Belle rushed forward and asked, what did you say? How could my liver source be unhealthy? The doctor avoided her, saying with disdain, your liver had mild fatty liver disease before the surgery, which made it less suitable for donation. But you insisted on donating, and the patient was in critical condition at the time. I explained all of this to your guardian. Please control your emotions. After saying this, the doctor left. Belle turned to me, her eyes red, and asked, "Sawyer, what's going on?" I looked at her face, thinking that everything was finally coming to an end. I said, "You were too emotional at the time, so the doctor had to discuss it with me. But you insisted on donating your liver, and there was nothing I could do." My explanation was flawless, and the hospital surveillance footage recorded everything. Lila pounced on Belle, pinning her down and choking her neck. "It's all your fault. Your liver was already failing. And you still wanted to harm Sean." Belle's parents suddenly appeared out of nowhere, shouting, "Let go of my daughter. My daughter already donated her liver, and that boy was just unlucky. Let her go." I watched the chaotic brawl unfold, let out a cold laugh, and silently turned to leave. I had seen enough of this farce. It was time to start planning for my own future. 2 hours later, I dragged my already packed luggage and walked resolutely onto the plane heading abroad. I had applied for an overseas exchange program right after my rebirth, and now that everything here had settled, there was no reason for me to stay any longer. The plane took off smoothly, and the scenery outside the window gradually receded. I gazed at the shrinking city, feeling not a trace of nostalgia in my heart. Here, I had endured too much pain and betrayal, and now I could finally bid it all farewell. After disembarking the plane and stepping onto the foreign soil, a fresh, crisp air greeted me. I took a deep breath, savoring the feeling of this brand new beginning. I knew the road ahead was still long, but I was ready to face any challenges that lay ahead. Later, I heard that Sean ultimately failed to survive the postoperative complications and passed away. Lila was overwhelmed with grief, and her conflicts with Belle's family grew increasingly intense, with the two families embroiled in a bitter feud. As for Belle, after enduring a series of ordeals, including the removal of her liver and spleen and postoperative infections, her health deteriorated day by day. Not only did she lose her beloved white moonlight, but she also fell into deep debt due to the exorbitant medical expenses. The woman who once gave everything for love ended up abandoned by all, physically and mentally exhausted. Her parents also exhausted their hearts and minds in this turmoil, leaving the family shattered. As for me, I started a brand new life in a foreign land. I studied hard, worked diligently, and met many like-minded friends. Gradually, I walked out of the shadows of the past and rediscovered the joy of life. I know that the pain of the past is now behind me, and I will write my own brilliant life in this new world. I looked up at the sky, the sunlight shining on my face, warm and bright. From now on, I will live for myself, pursue my own happiness and joy, and let the pain of the past remain forever in the depths of my memory.